Good morning, everybody, and welcome to another of our In Conversation webinars. My name is Paul North from the UK-ASEAN Business Council, and I'm joined here by our events manager, Veronica, who's been behind organising today's event. Today, we have with us a very special guest in Rebecca Kaye, who is an intellectual property specialist with the IPR SME Southeast Asia Helpdesk, and we will be talking about how to protect your products and services in the ASEAN markets. Just to let you know that you can send in at any time some questions through the question box in the lower right hand corner of the webinar dashboard, and we'll endeavour to answer those as we go along, or leave that to the end of the session. Just to start by saying that we, UK-ASEAN Business Council, help companies of all sizes build new contacts, provide market insights and raise the awareness of the vast commercial opportunities in what is the fastest growing region in the world. We also bring ASEAN to the UK through a sustained calendar of events. So watch this space. I do encourage you to all visit our website, ukabc.org.uk, where there's a huge amount of information on ASEAN, along with our forthcoming events programme. So without further ado, good morning, Rebecca. How are you?
I'm good. Nice to speak to you, Paul.
Yeah, excellent. And it's thanks very much. It's a great opportunity to have you in one of our webinars. So, Rebecca, I mean, tell us about yourself, the IPR SME Helpdesk, and what they do.
Okay, well, I am a UK intellectual property lawyer, and I've got my own firm here in the UK. And our firm specialises in helping UK businesses trade outside Europe. And their help desk it's amazing, really. It's an EU-funded resource which British businesses can use. It's got a website full of resources, but most importantly, it's got a helpline and on the phone and an email helpline. And if you send them an inquiry, they'll get a local IP lawyer to give you a tailored answer. So it's a great resource to use. And we're going to put that details up at the end, I think.
Yes, absolutely. We'll show that, and that's a good introduction. And I mean, intellectual property is a really important subject. I think it's overlooked by several companies. But so, I mean, why should we promote intellectual property, and why should we protect our goods and services?
You might think I'm partial, as it's my whole day job. But it really is the most important thing you can do if you're wanting to trade in the region. The analogy would be like buying a beautiful factory, then opening the doors and letting your competitors produce products in there for free, sometimes even not letting you produce products. So if you don't protect your intellectual property, you will not succeed in the region. It's somewhere where you do have to be a bit more proactive and a bit more protective. If you sit back and think the similar position to the EU will work there, it doesn't happen. You need to think earlier and take local advice. We're going to talk about what you need to do a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's good. So, I mean, just give us a feel for intellectual property rights, because there are different types, aren't there? And I think maybe some people get a little bit confused about the trademark and the patent and what they can and what they cannot register. I mean, could we go through, I think there's about 5 different intellectual property rights that companies should really look at?
Sure. So we're probably all sitting in front of a laptop, and I'm sitting in front of a laptop and I can see every single intellectual property in front of me. Well, some I can't see because some are intangible. The classic one and the most important for this region is a trademark. So in front of me, I can see the word Dell, and that's the trademark. So trademarks are the badge of origin. Patents, very important in the region. The technology, how this laptop works, is protected by patents. Copyright, that's something that's written down. So in this situation, it's software. Design right is the shape of the laptop. Or I've also got a phone in front of me. The case of the phone is protected by a design right. Should we talk about those in a bit more detail?
Yeah, absolutely. That would be good.
Okay. So if you do nothing else in Southeast Asia, you need to protect your trademark. It's by far the most important right there, partly because it's the one the authorities best understand and tend to be the most funded. So I used to work in Vietnam, and when I first started there, I had my kind of UK mindset, and I was very excited by my clients' patents or copyright, or I slowly learned that the trademark was the powerful tool. So to get a trademark, a lot of people say, I've already got one. You might have one in Europe, it's worth next to nothing. In Southeast Asia, you need to register your trademark in each country. So there's no way you can just press a button and cover the whole region. You need to pick your country and register there. And I think you need to work on the basis that unless you've filed first, you're not going to get the right to use that brand, because lawyers make money out of people forgetting to do this, and we go to court and we try and get it back, but that really is a fail. At least a year before you're even thinking about moving to the region, you need to go to your lawyer and you need to say, I need my trademark protected. And somewhere you really need to file imaginatively and broadly, because, for example, if I was a food supplement manufacturer here in the UK, I could probably get away with just protecting my trademark for food supplements, but in this region I'd be protecting it more widely. I'd be filing for example, energy drinks, things like that. So it's the kind of thing you want to think about. I'm trying to think what other fails people do. Local language marks. Everyone's not speaking and reading English. This is a classic mistake people make. What people are going to actually call your product. So there's quite a famous example of a fail by Pfizer, who launched, you won't have heard of it, Paul, but it's a drug called Viagra. And
no.
And people don't necessarily call it Viagra in different countries. So in China, this was the local people adopted a nickname for it, which was, I can't say it, but it meant Big Brother. But Pfizer had chosen a different local name and registered that, but hadn't bothered to, well, I don't mean to say hadn't bothered, but they didn't know what people were actually calling it. A local business filed for that name, and basically they were the ones who got to really trade off all the research effort of Pfizer into creating the drug, because when people went to buy it, they used the local name, and Pfizer couldn't use that local name, the local business could. Yeah. So the massive lesson there is you've got to think locally and keep in touch with what's happening locally.
Yes, that's right. And I mean, we know that some trademarks can be offensive in some countries. Have you got an example of that, Rebecca?
Oh, I've got my own failure, actually. I'm sorry you mentioned it. We had a client, and this was a long time ago, and we live and we learn. And our trademark was criminal, and it worked fine here in the UK. But when we tried to use it in Southeast Asia, and we found this out a little bit late, I admit, we couldn't actually use it. It was against public policy. So actually, the whole brand failed then in the UK as well, because this is not a good story about me, because we'd invested too much in it without actually going locally in each country and saying, can we use this brand? So again, there's the lesson, take some local advice.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think trademarks, I think we're reasonably clear on that. Let's move on a little bit now to the patents.
Okay, so patents are the second most important right. I need to explain what they are. So in short, they're a new solution to a technical problem. And you have to file for a patent before you've made it public. And so this is the same everywhere in the world. So basically, you have an invention. Before you tell anyone about it, you need to go to your lawyer and then you apply for a patent. And it's I have to admit, it's more expensive than a trademark. A trademark, let's say £500 per country. A patent in this region, I'd say more like £5,000 per country. But if you've got this new technical idea, unless you have a patent, anyone can do it on a country by country basis. So again, people often say, oh, well, I've got it here in the UK or in Europe, or I've got it in China. Think of drawing a line around each country. Patents aren't necessarily very flash things. A paperclip was patented post-it notes, basically it's anything that's a solution. In Southeast Asia, they are on the whole quite easy to get. It's often a re-registration process. So if you've got your patent in another country, it's often rubber stamped through.
Yes.
I'm trying to think what other fails people do. Quite often they forget their usual diligence and processes. So for example, in the UK, if you were creating a new process for doing something and you were working with someone else, you would have a contract with them, you would have pre-agreed if you came up with a new improvement, who would own that, who would apply for it. You'd have done all of that. Whereas quite often we see businesses going to Southeast Asia and kind of forgetting their usual ways of working. I don't know why that is. And sometimes they do get caught out. There's lots of examples of the local partner filing for the patent themselves, dumping the British business and being the ones with the rights in that country.
Yes. Yes. No, that also is a concern, and we're probably going to come on to that a little bit later on. But let's move on now to trademarks and the patents. But what about copyrights? What's that all about?
So copyright is the broadest intellectual property right. It covers such a broad range of things. So it's films, it's photographs, it's music, it's prints, it's books. It lasts for basically 50 years. So I should have said a patent lasts for 20 years, a trademark can last forever, a copyright's essentially 50 years. And here in Europe, everyone knows and everyone's taught that it's an unregistered right. You don't register it, it arises automatically. And you completely need to forget what you've learned when you go to Southeast Asia, because there it's a registered right. So again, another fail by me. When I first went and started working in Vietnam, I earnestly explained to my colleagues that they didn't need to bother registering copyright because it was an unregistered right. And I pointed out to them the conventions that Vietnam had signed, and this is why, and they just said, you're such an idiot. In Southeast Asia, registration certificates rule. So if you go along to the authorities and try and get them to enforce your copyright, and it's a bit different in the region, we're going to talk about enforcement later, but you need to cooperate with the authorities and work together. And if you haven't got a registration certificate, I don't like your chances. The registration certificate is the proof of the copyright, and that's what they'll be looking for. So it's a really important thing to do if copyright is relevant to your business. It's really easy to do, pretty cheap, a couple of £100 on the whole.
Right, really good. So that's 3 out of the 5. I think fourth one that you mentioned earlier as well was designs. And what should people look out for here when they come to that aspect of their business?
In Europe, registered designs are really powerful and really broad. They're pretty different in Southeast Asia. They're not as broad. They're essentially the specific appearance of a 3D product. Similar to patents, they have to be new when you register them. So when you first create the new appearance of a product, it has to be registered. You have to do it on a country by country basis. They last 10 to 25 years and you have to renew them about every 5 years. They're not hugely well understood by the authorities. You have to do a bit of work to enforce them, but they can, it can be good. And then the other thing you need to understand is that quite often people can get around them. So for example, it's the appearance of something. So if the person who's trying to rip you off tweaks the appearance a little bit, they might be able to get around your design. So you kind of think of your intellectual property rights as a armory of things that you're using to protect yourself, and how you do that depends on what your business is. They're not something to forget, but we've put them fourth on our list because on the whole they are the fourth most useful right.
Yes, brilliant, important, very important. And then lastly, covering the intellectual property rights is the trade secret. So, you know, I've got a recipe for my grandmother's apple pie, which is absolutely fantastic. And I don't want to share those ingredients with everybody. I don't want them to copy that. So tell us a little about the trade secrets and what we need to look out for there.
So I think for trade secrets, prevention is better than cure. So if you can not tell everyone how to make your grandmother's apple pie, that's the best way of doing it. So get factory A to make the pastry, factory B to make the filling, factory C to combine the two. That would be the best way of keeping it, rather than trying to rely on a trade secret law. But you know, sometimes you don't have to do that. So there are laws on trade secrets in this region, and it's not dramatically different to here. Basically, you have to keep it secret. It sounds obvious, but once something's out there, you lose your right to keep it protected. So you need to take really practical steps. Even things like writing confidential, password protecting it, making sure there's a contract in place with whoever you're telling stuff to, saying you must not tell anyone this. It's really important.
Yeah. I mean,
sorry.
No, carry on.
I was just going to say it's something else where people seem to act differently when they come to Southeast Asia. You know, in this factory scenario in the UK, you wouldn't go if you were thinking about working with a new factory and you had some secret ways of doing things. You wouldn't write it all down, hand it over and ask them to do a trial run to see if it works. You just wouldn't do that, whereas people seem to act differently in Southeast Asia, have the same level of diligence and caution. If you don't need to tell someone something, don't.
That's good advice. I mean, I think the attraction into ASEAN is the fact that it is the fastest growing region in the world, and it's got so much vast opportunities there for companies. But it is, as you've rightly said, important to consider all these aspects of your products and services. And just holding on there with the trade secrets, because we have got a question in from Michael, who's working with distributors in market. And his question is, how much actually should he tell them about his product?
It's such a good question. As little as you can, but they couldn't find out otherwise, but enough so that you can then do the deal. And I appreciate that is not an easy thing, but you need to have a contract with them before you tell them anything. And you need to have gone through those other steps. So I appreciate that it's a secret at the moment, but I don't know if this product's going to be called something. Make sure that trademark is registered in the region. If this product has an unusual shape, make sure you've applied for the registered design first. It's always prevention is better than cure.
Good. I hope that's cleared up the question for Michael there. And we've just got another question coming, and it is about intellectual property rights. So I think it's apt that we take it. And I think we have covered some of it already, Rebecca. But Daniel here is saying that he's got his products registered right the way through the EU. Does that cover him for ASEAN? If it doesn't, what does he need to do? No, absolutely not. Doesn't cover you at all. So you need to, and I don't know how you've got them covered. I don't know if it's a trademark. If it's a trademark, then we need to urgently file trademark applications there. So until you do that, anyone can take that trademark and use it instead of you in the region. So I'm really glad you've asked that question. European registrations are worth next to nothing. Country by country, you need to pick off each country and file. So quite often people might file, for example, in Singapore, but not Malaysia. That's not going to help you if where you want to go is Malaysia. I would work on the basis that people are going to squat, and unless you've protected a country, assume someone else is going to get that country. So think about where you want to go and register. And I appreciate it is a cost. There's a lot of countries there, but maybe if it was me, I'd be happy to leave, say, Myanmar, probably. I don't feel I'm going to make my fortune there at the moment, but
Thailand, Vietnam, Malaysia. Normally these are big markets and you need to file your IP in each of those countries. And I don't want to be too technical, but there are ways you can spread the cost. So, you know, you can file today and then a lot of the cost doesn't happen for a while. So you can see how things go and maybe pull some of the costs back in the future. But making that first filing is really important before you start talking to anybody.
You mentioned some costs already, but I mean, companies are going to be asking the question, how much is it going to cost me to do all this in ASEAN? And I know people are not going into all of the 10 ASEAN markets all at once. They're probably looking at one market or a couple of markets. But is there any idea of you know, sort of an average cost of what it would the companies would have to put aside for this?
So for trademarks, I would budget £500 per country per product class. And you could do some tactical registrations. Some of those countries are in this system called Madrid, which drops the price and means you can delay the price for a long time. Patents, as I said, more money. I budget £5,000 per country, and there are a lot of ways you can delay costs there. So you can put your filing in and then you can see how you get on and pull back the costs later. So that's £5,000 through to registration. Trade secrets are free. It's all around having a good contract. And actually, on the point of a good contract, that's not the same contract you use here in the UK, sent there asking someone to sign. There are different rules. For example, in some countries, it has to be in the local language or it doesn't work. So I have seen some fails where people have just applied a UK mentality, which doesn't work. You need to take some local advice. Copyright, it's really cheap. I'd say less than £500 per country.
Okay.
I don't think these are dramatic amounts, but maybe I'm partial.
They're not dramatic amounts, but I mean, they're amounts of money that the company has got to budget for, to put some one side to get into the business, into these marketplaces. That's very, very clear.
Yeah,
so, okay.
But I think unless you do it, you're not going to succeed. So I'd almost rather pause my plans for a year if I haven't got the money now than go out, experiment, tell everyone about my product, squatters pick it up, and then you've kind of blown it.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So let's get to that stage where it's been blown, because a company has done all the research, it's registered its trademarks and patents, they're in the market, they're doing business, and then one day, bang, the trademark is infringed. So, I mean, what realistically how can that be enforced in the region?
Really successfully. People often say to me, oh, yes, but, you know, they're not worth the paper they're written on, you can't enforce them. It's just not true. If you've done your work at the beginning and got the right trademark for the broad enough set of classes, you can enforce them very successfully. In some countries, it's easier and cheaper than it is here in the UK. You have to be more proactive. So, for example, here in the UK, you can get this nice thing called an injunction, and everyone enforces, abides by it. In this region, quite often what you're talking about is a police raid. So you'll have to go to the police, you'll have to show them your rights, you'll have to show them where the factory is or whatever. You'll have to explain why it's an infringement. You might need to show them the bit of law. You have to be a lot more proactive. But if you do that, you can be successful. And the authorities are really keen to attract our business. So, quite often the scales are tipped our way. They want to show that it's a good place to do business.
And I think that's a good message about working with the authorities and showing them your products and the differences going forward on how that has been infringed.
Yeah. If you just sit back and expect it to happen magically, it won't. You've got to be proactive, have good local partners to work with, and have done the registrations at the beginning. But yeah, if you do that, I'd be very happy for British businesses to think they could enforce their rights, particularly their trademark rights, The authorities are very familiar with those.
Is there going to be a cost to that enforcement?
Yes, nothing comes for free. Exactly. Yes, not, and you know, if you go through the high courts here in the UK, it's a huge cost. So it's not that kind of money. But yeah, if you're doing a raid, you know, sometimes you have to, yeah, it's a good few thousand for something like that, but not huge amounts of money. You know, if we're talking a big patent infringement trial in Singapore, the costs are similar to the UK, but you know, anti-counterfeiting or trademark raids in most of the region, it's not a huge amount of money. But that's part of your plan. You know, you before you go, you look at what you're going to do, you budget for it, you decide what you will and won't tolerate, and then you're prepared. It's not somewhere to be passive.
Exactly. So if you're prepared, you've got everything in place, there should be no need, hopefully, that you get to that stage where you have to go down that route of enforcing that with the authorities. So yeah, do the homework, get everything in place.
And I would be really public about my position. So some businesses take out newspaper ads. They say, we've registered everything and we do enforce it. And I wouldn't be shy. And when I was talking to local partners, I would be very clear. Everything's registered. We feel very strongly about this.
No, that's good advice. And, you know, I have also some personal experience in this where a trademark was infringed. And quite
for your apple pie?
Not for the apple pie, no. Something else in a former life. But that was an electrical product. And what happened there was the trademark was infringed. And, you know, I spent a lot of time, the organization spent a lot of money in trying to pull that back. But what also it did do, and what we didn't realize at the time and companies should be aware of, is that it actually stopped us trading in some companies until everything had been cleared and sorted out. What was the fake, what was the real product? And the advice you've given today about you know, the trade secrets, not telling everybody everything, it is really well worth it when you come to a situation like that. But hopefully companies don't get into that situation. So Rebecca, you know, where time is running on.
Isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. But good to talk to you. But lastly, some top tips for companies. Can you share that with them, what they should be doing?
Well, you'll have heard my obsession. I want you to register your trademarks early. I want you to think of it as a race. The first to file wins. I would say take good local advice. It's not the same. You need to know what the position is locally. And I would be vigilant. I wouldn't let enthusiasm run away with me. I would act with the same caution I would use at home. And I wouldn't tell people things I don't need to tell them. Enough to get them interested, but not my crown jewels.
Brilliant, Rebecca, that's fantastic. Thanks very much for speaking with us today and sharing that advice with everybody that's dialed in today.
Okay.
So again, thanks, Rebecca, and that's the end of our webinar for today. Thank you very much for attending, and I hope that has been useful for you. Just a couple of points I wanted to mention to you that next month we have another webinar, conversational webinar, which will be episode 5 in our series. That's the 20th of November, 9:30 to 10. And we are going to be talking to an educational company who's out in Southeast Asia, and they're going to share their experiences of how they did that and how they've been successful.
Oh, I will listen.
Just wanted to mention also that if you all our previous webinars, recordings and presentations are on the platform Go to Stage. If you register in there and then click on ASEAN Business Council, you'll see all our previous webinars which we have done. So thank you very much. Thank you very much for listening, and look forward to seeing you all next month.
Okay, bye.
Bye.